So to import the sprites, all I need to do is click on the main folder and right click in the window here and just say quick import sprites from the menu. That will bring up my file dialog box, which I'll select my sprites folder, and I've already copied all the Sammy's Quest sprites into this folder. So I'll select this folder, do a Control A to select all, and say open. And this will take a second, but this is basically taking all the sprites that are in that folder and importing them into the game. And while it's doing that, I'll mention the fact that you can create multiple different folders here in your sprites window. And it's a good idea to do so as you're creating the game, to create a folder for each different type of object. For example, I might have a Sammy folder where I would have all the Sammy sprites, or all the sprites associated with Sammy, and then I would have a Dave and a George and a Mr. Donatello and all the inventory objects, and each of those might have their own folder. Not only is it better to do that so that you can keep track of it's easier for organization purposes, but it's also easier for AGS. Every time you click on this main folder, it doesn't have to refresh, however many hundreds of sprites that I have here in the folder. So this is done, and you can see that I have all the sprites that make up the game here in the folder. So now we can go back and create our view for Sammy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the view 1, and I'm going to select the very first. I'm just basically going to replace this view with the Sammy view, with the Sammy graphics. So I'm going to double click on this first sprite here and find the associated Sammy sprite. So basically I'm finding a sprite that looks like Sammy just kind of standing there. The first sprite in every loop is the standing sprite, so it's just what the character looks like when they're just standing there. And again, this is the reason I said create folders, because I clicked on main, and for it to display all of the sprites in that folder, it just takes it a while. So it's a better idea to create folders for all the sprites so that you don't have to wait every single time. But I'm going to scroll down until I get to number 334. I just happen to know is the number for the first sprite. And I'm going to say use this sprite. So that's the first sprite. Now I'm going to actually delete the rest of these by just selecting this first one and hitting delete for every one after that. And now I'm going to create new frames off of this. So if I say create new frame, what that did is that actually created a new frame. And if you look over here, I selected number 334 for the first one. When I clicked create new frame, it automatically selected the very next one in sequence. So that's helpful to me, because the next one in sequence is the one we want. In fact, the next 6 after that first one are what we want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Take that back. There's 8 of them. So these are the 8 sprites, and it automatically put. You can see the numbers down here changing, the ID numbers. It automatically assigned the next value because that just happens to be what the sprites were that I imported from the original Sammy's Quest. They were in order like that. So that's the down view. In fact, let me go ahead and show a preview of that and say animate. And now loop 0, which is this one here, shows Sammy animating. So now we want to do the same thing for left, right, and up. So I double click the first one. Actually, instead of double clicking, I'm just going to go over here and type the number. I just happen to know what it is. It's 342, so I'm just going to type 342 here. And that's Sammy standing to the left. And again, I'm going to delete these and create new frames. And there's actually one more in this loop, so there's one more frame of animation than in the one above it. So there's the frames for him walking left. Now the frames for him walking right, I'm going to use the same frames. I'm going to start at 342, and I'll explain why in just a second. Let me go ahead and create all of these. So this is supposed to be the loop for when Sammy walks right, but you can see that it still looks like he's walking to the left. So the way that you do that is, instead of having to draw another frame and having to save another frame of animation of the exact same thing with him just flipped the other way, you can actually tell AGS to do that, to flip the sprite for you by using this flipped attribute. So you can change from false to true, and that just flips that particular sprite. So I can go through, and if you double click on the word false, it'll toggle it for you. So I can go through and double click on each one of these and change them from false to true, and that basically flips each one. And that way, again, it just saves for you from having to actually draw those frames of animation AGS will do it for you. And then finally we have one more set that we'll have to do, and that starts at 360. These frame numbers, by the way, you would get when you imported your sprites into your sprite editor here. AGS would assign those sprites for you, the sprite numbers rather, and so you would just have to kind of know, or you would have to kind of go into your sprite list and see what the numbers were, and you could assign them here. And typically, if you import the sprites all at the same time, AGS will automatically number them sequentially, so you don't have to worry about that. So let's just make sure that these look okay. I'm going to click animate. This is the one for him walking down. Now go to the next loop, and that's him walking to the left. Go to the next loop, is him walking to the right, and go to the next loop, and that's him walking up or away from the camera. So that's exactly what we want. Now all we have to do is assign that sprite, or that loop, that view rather, sorry, I'll get it right in a second. Assign that view to Sammy. And we already piggybacked off of the character that already existed, which already had a normal view set to 1. But if it didn't, we would set this normal view, which is basically the walking view, we would set that to the view that we wanted to use, in this case 1. And if we click animate, we can see that Sammy is now animating exactly the way we want it. So that's all that there is to that. I'm going to actually rename this view because I don't like the name view 1. I'm going to name it V for view, and then I'm going to say Sammy normal. And then I'm going to create another view, view 2. I'm going to edit. There is actually no frames of animation here, but now this is going to be what we're going to use for Sammy's speech. The speech frames, when he's actually moving his mouth and bobbing his head up and down. So I'm going to name that V Sammy speech. Over here in the editor, I just right-clicked on it and said rename. And then I'm going to say create new frame. Now for the Sammy speech, I've got another copy of AGS over here with Sammy's Quest in it. That's what I keep referring back to so I can get the right numbers here. For Sammy's speech, that starts out with frame number 368. And again, these are all sequential, and there's 5 of these. And then you have to do the same thing. You have to create one for the character facing to the left, which is 373. And there's 5 of those. Create a new one for Sammy facing to the right, which again is 373. And I'm going to do them all flipped again, like I did before. Actually, I'm going to flip these because this is actually him facing to the right. These are the ones I need to flip, because we want him facing to the left instead of to the right. So I'm going to flip all of those. And then finally we have one more to create, and that's him looking away from the camera. And that's going to start at 383. 383. And then create 5 of those. So let's see what that looks like. Let's do a show preview, animate. So that's what Sammy looks like when he's talking. That's him talking to the left, talking to the right, and talking away from the camera. So all we have to do now is go back to the character and assign that view to the talking view, which is SpeecView here. It's view number 2. That's the ID number, which is what this wants. So I'm just going to type 2 here. And now you have the SpeecView box gets filled in with that view, and if I say animate, you'll see that's what Sammy looks like when he's speaking. Okay, and that's all there is to this series, this set of videos. The next set of videos, we will create our first room in the main hall. We'll put Sammy in there, and we'll have him speak a couple of things, and we'll show that show how that stuff works, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching, guys.